Lee says Chiolman's a demon, so he answers that it's about time he realized it. Samwook disbelievingly asks what he means, saying Chiolman can't be a demon before being transported to a black emptiness. He nervously wonders where he's before hearing desperate cries and turning around to see the other party members being tortured before Zhang Yan reaches out, asking him to help her as Chiolman uses his aura to put them in a torturous illusion. He menacingly remarks that they're shivering in fear of an illusion they're dreaming and is about to mock humans before Lee swiftly attacks him. But Chiolman effortlessly blocks it with his armored hand and asks if he doesn't care about whether this human dies and should know that if he dies, so does the human. Lee draws back, noting that he can't pierce the armor and should go for the gaps before dodging an attack as Chiolman slashes with his sword, asking if he's still going to attack him despite that. Lee activates his skill. Natural enemy and a screen says his battle power is growing because of being in the presence of a demon, before he stabs Chiolman's mate, but it still fails to pierce his armor despite making a heavy crack as he whirls around and mocks how fake humans are, saying he was all friendly with this human and then. But suddenly gets interrupted as Lee slashes his face, making a deep cut and knocking his glasses off. Chiolman falls to the ground and starts screaming. Failing to believe that he was cut by a mere human and realizes that this is Silver, Lee stands over him and tells him to not talk to him since he doesn't talk to Prey, as Chiolman asks himself where it all went wrong as he reminisces on when his younger brother, Taemin, had asked him if why he's spacing out and if it hurts a lot, but Chiolman reassuringly answers that he just got distracted, so Taemin worryingly says this is why he should avoid ruptures and should just join the guild to become an analyst there. Later, he'd run into some guys who'd recognized him as Taemin's elder brother and had asked to tell him congrats from them for clearing another boss raid and teased that he should work harder to be more like him or just heed his advice and stop since he might end up dying. He says he just wanted to be a brother his younger brother could be proud of, thinking of how the demon imp had said he'll help and had taken over his body, telling him to just watch from the back while he desperately wondered what was happening and had tried to stop the party members, saying he's a demon as they enthusiastically entered the rupture, but to no avail. He depressingly says he put everyone in danger, and if it weren't for him, but suddenly gets separated from the demon as Lee delivers the blow at it. Back in present day, Im angrily calls him crazy, asking if he doesn't know that Chiolman will die as well before Lee says he gets it and stabs his body while Chiolman holds it in place before Lee tells Chiolman that he's received his pride. Chiolman suddenly wakes up in alarm and sees he's back before looking around in confusion, saying he was definitely possessed by a demon as the others rush at him in worry, asking if he feels alright. He looks down his hands, realizing that he's alive and wondering how it's possible since he was stabbed before Lee says he told him that there was no need to worry, while inwardly remarking that a demon hunter's attacks only affect a demon, something he remembers even after 10 years. Later, Chiolman shows Taemin a post of a person saying their party leader was possessed by an imp and says he was the one hearing, which Taemin drops his cup in shock. Taemin disbelievingly asks if he really wants to quit being a player and become his guild, Gon's analyst, saying he finds it hard to believe since he was against the idea before, but Chiolman says the person he met made him realize his capabilities and what his role is, and the two discuss about Lee before Taemin hands him the contract, saying he's Gon's new analyst, but Chiolman becomes worried after reading the conditions. Meanwhile, Lee happily sees that his level went up, saying the gnolls didn't amount to much, but one imp was enough to increase his level so much. Wondering on how he should distribute the stat points, he decides to think it over after resting, but Granfell starts cleaning the house. Later, once he's done eating, he thinks of Granfell's 3 main traits: intelligence, magical strength, and physical strength, before receiving a message from Chiolman inviting him to join the Gold Guild because of his strength, but Lee remarks that he doesn't have time for this and rejects the offer. As Chiolman and Taemin look at the no he had sent, they wonder if he received another offer, making Taemin angrily list down the list of benefits they offered, asking what other guild would have given him this. He says he can't let this go and decides to go scout him out himself. He asks Chiolman what he looks like, so Chiolman thinks for a moment before saying he's like an aristocrat from a fantasy novel. Meanwhile, as Granfell is studying, Lee happily says he can understand the fundamentals of magic and could use them if he had the mana before moving on to distribute stat points. He gives 2 points into both strength and agility and 7 points to mana since it's low, before remembering the tragic story he'd written for Granfell and devoting 1 point to luck. He says he's essentially doubled his luck before falling asleep and happily sees that he's received a class quest the next day. Lee explains that after Arcana became real, quests started to get very rare because there weren't any NPCs to deliver them in real life, which is why class quests are even more rare. As he reads the details, he says it looks like an ordinary quest, but reading an article confirms his suspicions, and he remarks that class quests are quests given to one person only and are such amazing quests that people start mentioning getting into top ranks upon receiving one, but there's no way a level 67 like him would receive one, which means that he's the only demon hunter left. He thinks back to when Granfell had attempted the test, remembering how it's pointless, repetitive work, and the facilities are inadequate at best, but Granfell says they all made him stronger, so Lee dismisses it and decides to check what the quest is. Later at the 8AU, a facility created in order to reduce the chaos and damage in the world, who hired all the developers who worked on Arcana and collected the information related to analyze the players. In other words, they're overworked. A man tiredly asks his senior if there will be any more Rupture updates this week, saying it's already 8 p.m., but is instructed to just keep refreshing for updates before the senior suddenly notices that there's a new update, which tells of a new demon named Count Ascura of level 430 coming. Seeing this, the senior despairingly says this is impossible until a miracle happens. Once Lee's rigorously exercised, he admits it wouldn't be possible without Granfell's determination and remarks that he's finally completed the stupid quest and is excited to see what the next one is. As he barely manages to complete his exercise the next day, he explains it's a stupid repeat quest and Granfell is the only way he's able to do this every day. Before wondering how long this will go on before he receives his reward, he angrily asks if it'll be something like a healthy body at the end. He suddenly receives 4 stat points and amazingly remarks that it takes millions of one to raise 1 point, but he just received 4 after completing a single quest and wonders if he'll keep getting stat boosts after completing these quests. News on the radio suddenly alerts him, saying Count Ascura of level 430 has been added to the Count family, and that almost all guilds have opted out of this insanely difficult rupture. Later, as he's sitting at his desk in frustration, he explains how difficult it is to defeat demons who, in addition to becoming stronger after every fight, can cause many status abnormalities, and one has to be at least 10 levels higher to beat them, meaning he has no shot at fighting one, but this quest wants him to do so. Lee wonders how Granfell sees him vowing to punish the inferior species heavily for their sin, hearing which he distressingly says he knew it. Lee finds out that Count Ascura is in Russia, meaning he'll have to go to the Mage's Tower, which contains a portal, and is the main reason why so many foreign guilds open their branches in Korea. He looks up the distance from his house and decides to just take the train, but Granfell puts on his coat, saying they already wasted too much time, but suddenly remembers something before heading out and stuffs his coat with tea sachets. Meanwhile, several reporters bustle at the tower and say that Gol is coming as well. Before seeing Taemin and Shulman walking up, they quickly surround them and start asking questions. Taemin confidently answers that they haven't yet found a way to defeat Count Ascura and are beating other competitors by going in the rupture first and actually helping world peace. Suddenly, the Shining Guild arrives as well, and all the reporters bustle towards the guildmaster. Loksu tells his other members that Gol is probably just anxious since their position is getting lower and lower due to large guilds entering Korea for the Magic Tower and are probably betting on this expedition. Taemin asks Shulman about Lee and wonders if he'll also attempt the rupture, and they'll meet him in the Magic Tower. Meanwhile, as Lee's riding on the bus, he watches his 100th video regarding magic and says he fully understands it now. There are 3 levels to magic activation: inspecting the mana, interfering the mana, and then manifesting it. He swiftly summons a spout of fire, alarming someone sitting beside him, and the driver tells him to not use skills in the bus since it's dangerous, so he coolly agrees before noticing that magic hasn't been added to the stat window. Inside the Magic Tower, he remarks that it feels very different from how it looked from the outside and steps in front of the portal and starts feeling it before being accidentally pushed inside as a man from Gol knocks into him while Taemin scolds him from afar. Shulman starts giving a briefing of the rupture's circle and 3 layers, explaining that the Count Ascura resides in the innermost one and that its castle will most likely be summoned as well. Meanwhile, in Russia, reporters surround the rupture, and one guy live streaming says he's going to take a look into the mirror before bumping into Lee and strongly reprimanding him for not knowing where he's going, but Lee menacingly tells him to move, saying he has no patience left in him, while inwardly remarking that he meant he's too cold. Facing the rupture, he says he's finally made it and hopes it's warm from here on out. Meanwhile, Leonie swiftly cuts through a horde of zombies before 3 people tiredly come after her, and the woman tells her to stop going so fast, even if she's above level 300, but the man tells her to let her be, hearing which Leonie starts spouting abuse at them.